The Zimbabwean celebrities on this list were once big in their time, and they left behind big works to be remembered with. Unfortunately, their legacy is equally coupled with alarming amounts of poverty. These are the Zimbabwean celebrities who died poor. Number 1, Biggie Tembo. This is a name that many Ama2K might fail to recognize. Biggie Tembo and the Bundu Boys are well known for producing songs like Simbimbino as well as Chekudya Chose Tangawaraira. Biggie had a phenomenal rise to fame, and at the height of his glory, he toured the breadth and the width of the world, chauffeured to venues from luxury hotels, and at one time in 1987, he even shared the stage with Madonna. He also went on to win a Sony Award for his BBC Radio 1 documentary, but it all came tumbling down in 1991. Having been the band leader of the Bundu Boys for many years, in 1991, Biggie Tembo decided to distance himself from the group, citing that irreparable differences had emerged. Unfortunately, he became ill shortly after. Because of sickness and failing to successfully launch his solo career amongst other reasons, he started abusing alcohol and eventually got deported from the United Kingdom to Zimbabwe, which forced his family to also relocate to Zimbabwe, but unfortunately, more tragic events awaited them. Firstly, the house he had bought on mortgage was repossessed by the bank for deferring payments. This was followed by a few years of continued hardships, which saw him getting admitted to the Harare Hospital psychiatric ward before he eventually took his own life on 29 July 1995. It is safe to say that even many years after the passing of Biggie Tembo, his family's plight hasn't changed much. When the Herald newspaper got in touch with them a few years ago, his widow Ratizai was said to be squatting in an unelectrified 2-roomed cottage in Snake Park, where she survived by selling SARS. At number 2, we have Bhonzo, real name Lawrence Simbarashe. He was a household name on ZBC and a TV darling for anyone who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. He is especially remembered for his iconic character on the comedy series Timina Bhonzo, as well as on other film productions like Cry Freedom, Cheat, The Slit, Flame, as well as an international blockbuster by the name of King Solomon Mines. At the height of his career, Mdhara Bhonzo was the face of almost every advert on ZBC. A role model for children, he generally enjoyed a good life, and at one time he had as much as 9 cars at his house. Sadly, a few years into the new millennium, everything came tumbling down for him. With a worsening economic situation and drying up acting gigs, he started selling off his cars one by one until he was left with nothing. The once great Mdhara Bhonzo became a mere nobody. Even though he did get the once in a blue moon acting gig, it wasn't enough to restore him to his former glory, and from as far back as 2011, he could be seen on the streets of Harare moving around with a Bible, claiming that God was his only friend. From there, he retired to living an ordinary life at his house in St. Mary's, Chitungwiza, until he died in May 2018 at Chitungwiza Central Hospital after a long battle with diabetes. Sadly, even in his death, there was nothing to show for all his years of fame, as very few people from the acting industry attended his funeral. Moving along with John Chibadura, the renowned musician and guitarist who was nicknamed Mr. Chitungwiza. He was well known for songs like Rudo Runokosha as well as Sware Kufa Kwangu. John Chibadura had a great start to his musical career. He formed the Sungura Boys, a band which had the Chimbetu brothers, Simon and Nyson Chimbetu. After separating from the Chimbetus, John Chibadura formed his own band, the Tembo Brothers, which was extremely successful. They even toured the UK as well as Netherlands. Besides this, John had one advantage. His mother and father were of Mozambican origin, hence he was also regarded as the son of Mozambique. He was extremely popular in Mozambique, so popular to the extent that he was once flown in the presidential helicopter. At the height of his musical career, John Chibadura was making a lot of money, but in the late 1990s, everything began to fall apart one by one. Firstly, he caught his wife in bed with another man and he divorced her. Secondly, it is not well known what happened to his house, but at some point he lost his house, as at the time of his death, he was no longer a homeowner. He died in a rented apartment. His final fate came in 1999 when he had a failed tour of Mozambique, which left him owing a lot of money to a lot of people. This was just the beginning of many dark days. He lost all his musical instruments to debt collectors and he was diagnosed with tuberculosis. Sadly, despite the ill health, John Chibadura spent the last days of his life in the courts of law fighting debt collectors while living in a rented house in New Marlborough. John Chibadura died on 4 August 1999. He reportedly succumbed to stress-induced depression coupled with ballooning debts and loneliness. It seems like Zimbabwean musicians have the worst share of poverty, as Kenneth Chigodora, another musician who was popular for songs like Musango Ndo Zungaira, Sisi Dori as well as Ndine Urombo, also died in abject poverty. Chigodora's troubles began in 1990 when their band leader Dixon Dube decided to exit from the group, which left their band dysfunctional. Chigodora tried to form a new band, Black Elephant, by joining another small band, but unfortunately, some of his former band members mysteriously died after short illnesses. This, coupled with financial difficulties, forced him to opt out of his promising musical career to retire to his rural home in Weza, where he died a mere peasant farmer. When Urban Grooves was ruling the airwaves, Jamal and Betty Makaya gave us the song Kurwizi. It seemed like Jamal had struck a pot of gold, but unfortunately, he became a one-hit wonder. His short-lived fame was followed by alcohol and drug abuse, and eventually he got off his high horse and got a job in Mozambique. Sadly, it seemed like misfortune followed him everywhere, as he returned from Mozambique without anything to show for his efforts except ill health. At the time of his death, he was financially down and out, as he died at home on 9 October 2013. He was HIV positive and he had been battling motor neuron disease. Most people will not recognize this name these days, but soccer fans from the 90s will tell you marvelous deeds that this man achieved. Makwanese Francis Shonhai was once a star defender for Dynamos as well as the backbone of the Zimbabwe national team before he moved to South Africa, where he played for Cape Town Spurs as well as Amazulu. While he was still alive, Francis was said to be a credit to South African soccer, both on and off the field, and at one time he was one of the highest paid footballers in South Africa, earning him the nickname Mr. Classy for his lavish lifestyle. His misfortunes began in 2001 when he sustained a life-changing injury which forced him to retire from football. At the time of his death in 2006, most of his fortune had been lost and he was now working as a personal driver for his former boss. He died while being cared for by his friend in March 2006 after battling meningitis and TB for some time. James Chimombe is also another one. He died on 23 October 1990 at the age of 39. It is rumored that he was HIV positive. Even though he wasn't living in poverty at the time of his death, he left behind his wife and several children. Unfortunately, in recent times, it was reported that his family is now living from hand to mouth. It is quite shocking given how his music is still popular and even played by major radio stations. Sadly, it was reported that one of his children by the name of Freddie is now blind and literally destitute. Paul Matavire's legacy is also in a similar plight. Even though his music is still popular and played by major radio stations, his family is living in abject poverty. When his family was visited in 2021, they found his grave in an unspeakable state, and the house he had been building before his death was also in a similar condition, uncompleted and falling apart. While these are just a few examples, many popular Zimbabweans of old and recent times die poor. One really wonders what is happening to these famous people. Are they being swindled by promoters and recording companies? What is happening to their royalties? Is it a lack of financial intelligence or just pure mismanagement? That brings us to the end of our video. Leave your comments below and tell us what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment.